Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to our ISP Town Hall meeting. I'm Greg Carbonetti, ISP's Associate Director of Publications, and today I have an opportunity to facilitate a conversation between our members and ISP's leadership. We're very thankful for everyone who could join us today, and want to remind you that today's conversation will be recorded. When we begin the Q&A portion of today's meeting, there are going to be three ways you can choose to engage with us. The first is that you can submit written questions via Zoom's Q&A functionality. Additionally, you can utilize Zoom's chat feature to ask questions there. And for those brave enough, you can go ahead and raise your hand icon, and I can unmute your microphone, and you can go ahead and verbalize your question to the panel. We encourage any and all questions that you have for us today and hope that you'll utilize this venue to have your voice heard. At this time, I'm very excited to introduce our panelists for today's town hall meeting. First, Andrew Rice is IASP's president and professor of pain research at Imperial College London, and an honorary consultant in pain medicine at Chelsea and Westminster Hospital in the UK. He's active in both clinical practice and translational research, elucidating neuropathic pain. Next, Mary Cardosa is ISP's president-elect and a visiting consultant pain specialist at Siliang Hospital in Selangor, Malaysia. Mary's done pioneering work in setting up pain services in Malaysia for acute cancer and chronic pain management in Ministry of Health hospitals and primary care settings. And she started the Manang Pain Management Program in 2002, which has become a model for self-management programs in Southeast Asia. Up next is Catherine Bushnell, who's ISP's immediate past president and previously the scientific director of the National Center for Complementary and Integrative Health and Integrative Health at the National Institutes of Health in the US. It's a mouthful. Her research interests include forebrain mechanisms of pain processing, psychological modulation of pain, and neural alterations in chronic pain patients. Up next is Michele Sterling, ISP secretary and a musculoskeletal physiotherapist at the University of Queensland in Australia. Michele's research focuses on the mechanisms underlying the development of chronic pain after injury, predictive algorithms for outcomes, and developing effective interventions for musculoskeletal injury and pain. She's also a long-serving section editor for our journal Pain. Today, we also have Michael Gold, who's ISP's treasurer and professor of neurobiology at the University of Pittsburgh in the US. Michael's made important contributions to the understanding of injury-induced plasticity and nociceptive afferents and their contribution to the manifestation of pain. And last, but certainly not least, we also have Steve Gardner, who's ISP's chief executive officer. Steve has spent his career working in and consulting to associations in Washington, D.C. in the US, and previously consulted or worked for several organizations, notably the American Chemistry Council, the American Academy of Physicians Assistants, US Pharmacopoeia, and the International Safety Equipment Association. And Steve's been with ISP in his current capacity since December of 2023. Thank you all for that mouthful. A very, very impressive panel. And with that, we're going to allow each member of our leadership team to share a few words before we open the floor to all of your questions and comments. And I think we'll get started in the order I ran it down. So thanks everybody for being here. And why don't I throw over to you, Andrew, to get us started.
Thank you, Greg. Welcome everybody. Thank you for giving up your time to attend this. This is part of a series of town halls that will continue over the next 2 years. The first one was to leads on our various committees and task forces and other parts of the leadership. The second was to our chapters and federation leads, and now this is open to the general membership. It's part of our effort to be more transparent, to remain in contact with the members, and as Greg said, any question or point is gratefully received. Nothing is off the table. I'd like to take this opportunity, we're just over a month into it, into our new global year, Pain Management, Research and Education in Low and Middle Income Settings. It includes countries, but also disadvantaged populations in high income economies. And that's led by Saurabh Sharma from Nepal in Australia and Margarita Calvo from Chile. So you'll see plenty coming out on this topic. Welcome again. I look forward to your questions.
Thanks, Andrew. Mary, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, thanks, Greg. Well, it's morning for me. Good morning, good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. As Andrew said, this is this town hall is the IASP leadership's attempt to open up to hear the views of all our members, to give you the opportunity to give us direct feedback So I look forward to listening to all your questions and your views. And as Andrew said, we have just launched the global year for pain management in low resource settings, and we hope that this will be a very exciting global year. So I'm not going to speak a lot because we're waiting to hear from you, and I will hand over to Catherine.
Yes. Catherine, why don't you jump right in?
Hi. Thank you, Mary. Well, I'm the past president, and so I'm now retired from my day job. So I've been involved with ISP for more than 30 years in various roles. And I just want to say how rewarding it has been for me to be involved with ISP and it's the whole community that's been involved, and all the friends that I've made through ISP. So I just like to encourage other people who haven't been that involved. And it's nice to see that there's so many people are participating in the town hall. But if some of you have not gotten involved in various ways, I'd really like to encourage you to do so. I mean, it's nice to give back, but you actually get more out of it than you give. I think, at least for me, it's been that way. So if you have any questions about how to get involved, you can contact the office or you can contact me or anybody on this panel, and we can help you help facilitate that. So anyway, thank you all for coming today, and I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Catherine. And what we can do as well is we can add into the chat some of the contact emails, depending upon what your inquiry is for our staff here at ISP. So we can drop those in shortly. Next up, I believe we have Michele. Michele, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Greg. And welcome everybody. And it's great to have so many people come along to the town hall. While I'm the secretary at the moment of IASP, I've also served the IASP in numerous positions over the years. Last year, I was the chair of the Scientific Program Committee in the Amsterdam World Congress. We taking the Congress feedback that we received around that, most of it was pretty good, which is terrific. Taking it seriously, and at the moment I'm chairing a group. It's called the Reimagining Congress Group, looking at how we can make improvements for Congress as moving into the future. But as everybody else says, great to have you all here. I'm looking forward to engaging and answering your questions.
Thank you, Michele. Appreciate it. Michael, do you want to dive in?
Yeah, hello, everybody. Wearing my treasurer hat here. I'll keep my comments to the sort of financial status of the organization. As you all are aware, we're living in a rapidly changing world that certainly has its impact on the associations like ours. Pre-COVID versus post-COVID, things have certainly changed. They're changing in the publication world. The ISP, certainly other organizations had a rough time getting through COVID. The ISP certainly took its lumps, but with the guidance of certainly Catherine as the previous president, Mike Robotham as the previous treasurer, Steve taking over at the helm of the office, I think we really righted the ship. We're certainly have a clear plan for moving forward, at least over this coming year, and I certainly look forward to feedback from all of you on really where we need to keep our focus with the resources, time, and energy that we have. So I thank you all for coming.
Thank you, Michael. Really appreciate it. And Steve, last but not least, do you want to say a few words before we open up the floor to questions?
Yeah, thanks, Greg. So the only thing I want to say is that, first of all, I'm really enjoying my time here at ISP. It's been a great organization to join, and I'm really thankful for the folks that I get to work with, both on staff and in the membership. It's been a great experience. I'm really enjoying my time. One of the things I wanted to say is that if you have had difficulty getting responses from ISP or engaging with ISP, we've really increased our focus on member service and being more responsive and answering your questions in a timely way, and just being more on top of things when we get member inquiries. So, if you experienced problems in the past, getting your questions answered or getting the right resources at ISP, please come back to us. Please try again. We have really put a lot of effort into making this a better member experience for our members. So please engage with us. Come back to us with questions, whatever you need. We're here for you as a member. Thanks, Greg.
Thank you, Steve. Okay, so we've got our introductions completed. We've heard from everybody on our panel today, and now I'm excited to open up the floor to any and all questions. So as a quick reminder for those that may have missed out at the outset of our town hall today, there are 3 ways that you can ask questions. You can use Zoom's Q&A functionality, you can drop your questions into the chat, or furthermore, you can go ahead and raise your hand and we can unmute your microphone. I also want to take this moment to say thank you to Renee Chassie, IASP's publications manager. She's helping me facilitate the chat and stuff today. So for those that are kind of curious as to who's attending to all these questions, but I digress. Why don't we start here? I think that this is a question that I'll start with Andrew and maybe Steve has some insight and other members on our panel. So this comes from Jan Damerholt in the US, and it's simply, are there plans to establish working relationships with other professional organizations? I know that we've had relationships in the past, but curious as to are we rethinking this? What are plans for the future? Andrew, do you have some insight or thoughts around this building of professional relationships?
Yeah, I think, but I'd also like Steve to answer. I mean, one of the things that really through the last 2 presidential terms we've been doing is building the relations within what I call the IASP family. So in particular to our federations and SIGs, and also to chapters, and that's quite an important part of what we do. So that's one of our priorities, and that's ongoing. In terms of other organizations, from time to time we have informal or semi-formal relations with them. So for our Congress, a couple of cycles ago, we had a relationship with the International Headache Society. In the past, we've had relations with the Peripheral Nerve Society. So there are plans, but we very much like suggestions. And of course, a lot of members are members of more than one organization. So if you're a member of another organization you think we should be having a relationship with, then please contact us and let us know. But Steve, this also falls very much into your remit as CEO.
Well, I have a very long list of organizations that I want to establish, either reestablish relationships or create new ones, because I really feel like we need to be the resource for other organizations to come to when they want to do education or speakers or whatever on pain. One of the things that I've had in the queue that I really want to get finished this year is like a speakers bureau where we list people by their expertise so that other organizations can come to us. We have people here who are, in physical therapy, in basic research, but in also many clinical practices. And all of those groups have associations, and all of those groups are looking for pain expertise from time to time. And I'd like us to very much be a resource for them. I also think just in general, when you have a deep network of relationships with those types of organizations, you get opportunities that you can't anticipate or imagine today. And through those increased relationships, you create a lot of synergy and a lot of, sorry to use that buzzword, but you create a lot of energy around new ideas. So yes, that's very much at the top of our list for things to do this year.
Oh, thank you.
Steve, could I add in one comment there?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not exactly another society, but one organization where we have very active relations is with the World Health Organization, particularly through ICD-11 in the past. We've recently had a call for members and got a fantastic response of volunteers, and Mary led a selection process. And the announcement is going to be made later in the week, but I can give you a heads up that it's great to see Richard Wicksell from Sweden on the call, and he's going to be our next liaison to the World Health Organization as Rolf Detlef Treed has now completed his term. So congratulations to Richard who's here.
Got to make sure I'm unmuted. Thank you, Andrew. And congratulations. Big shoes to fill, but a great foundation set, and it's always great to see the advocacy work that comes through that group, especially in the context of the WHO. All right, please, by all means, it's been a little quiet so far, but we, had or rather, there was an opportunity to pre-submit some questions. So I certainly have quite a few to pull from. Since Michele mentioned it during her introduction, I want to, maybe I'll start with you, Michele. I know a lot of people are probably excited to talk World Congress. So you've had an opportunity to participate in this Reimagining Congress committee, Michele. Essentially, and I'd imagine that this is a question that many folks on the panel might want to touch upon, but maybe I'll start with Michele. What are some of the lessons that we've learned from previous World Congresses, and how do you think that's shaping our preparations for Bangkok? Or, what are some things that have been under the microscope, Michele, or changes that we're kind of discussing that we're hopeful to see come to fruition in Bangkok as we think about doing things a bit different?
Yeah, sure. Well, we did do a survey feedback of the people, the attendees, and the people that usually come to the Congress and didn't this time. Of the attendees, the feedback was very favorable. So I think in some ways we have to be careful about not breaking something that is people enjoy and get a lot out of. However, there are some areas, as I've mentioned, that we could improve, I think. One of the difficulties and the challenges for the SPC is trying to balance basic science and clinical research, clinical sciences and clinicians together. The basic science will say there's not enough basic science, and the clinical researchers say there's not enough clinical science. So because we're a multidisciplinary organization, trying to balance those components, the different disciplines together can be challenging, but I think we're moving forward in a promising direction. Some of the other things we're looking at is having different formats for the workshops. So there's within the conference, the topical workshops. We have tried different things in the past, debates. They're meant to be more discussion type workshops. And sometimes these sorts of things work, and other times, they don't work so well. So it's trying to look at new ways to get the audience engaged, the attendees engaged in the scientific discussions. I think that's the other thing, of course, that comes up, and it's not so much to do with the scientific program, is the registration fees, and the council's looking at that. Sometimes those things, and there's probably people that can comment about that other than me, but are outside our hands to a certain extent, with taxes and so forth that are required to be paid. But that's something we're very conscious of, and trying to keep the Congress affordable. So we're looking at registration fee models that might be able to address the different income levels of people that want to attend the conference, shall I say, and different experience levels. Sure.
Thank you, Michele. Michael, as the treasurer, and from Michele's lips, she's correct. We're very cognizant about registration fees as an organization, and you're pretty intimately knowledgeable about what's going on with the organization. Can you speak to your thoughts on Congress, Michael, and some of the things that we take into consideration as it pertains to registration fees, and ways that we can work together to hopefully be able to bring some of these rates down? Anything you'd want to share, Michael?
I think everything is on the table, as Michele has just said. The coming from the perspective of the basic scientist, where my colleagues in basic science are particularly cognizant of or constrained by the cost of attending meetings, the registration fees are something I certainly appreciate the impact of, and really approach the issue of how to drive the costs down. As Michele said, we really are considering all the factors, and there's, as she highlighted, there's a lot of competing factors. The choice of venue. We are an international organization. There are certainly places that are potentially easier for people to fly to from around the world, but you sort of have to balance the access. There are, as Michele highlighted, countries that have potentially more less expensive housing versus less expensive venues. To the extent that you start cutting corners or cutting costs on food, et cetera, you tend to get pushback from venue attendees who are saying that we didn't get coffee and we didn't get lunch, and we get grumbles about that. So I think it's a matter of balancing all of those factors and really trying to find the best solution to keep the costs down. And of course, to the extent that we can get sponsorship to help cover any additional costs is the final potential solution there.
Thanks, Michael. I appreciate it. Mary, I want to ask you, being in Southeast Asia, I'm certainly not incredibly knowledgeable about Thailand. Do you want to speak to, what we can maybe expect in 2026 and, why we should be excited to visit Bangkok and what it has to offer?
Well, I hope everybody here will come to Bangkok, because I think there are many things in Bangkok. The convention center is new, and I think it will be a great place. And Bangkok, of course, Thailand, the food is the attraction. But having said that, our scientific content, I think, is always something to look forward to when in all our congresses. And so I think that having it in Bangkok makes it more accessible to people in this region, Asia Pacific, which I appreciate, because we don't have to go across the world to attend a World Congress, the other side of the world, like we usually do. So I hope especially people in this region will take the opportunity, but I also hope that members from Europe and North America and South America will come and join us here as well, because there are lots of things that we are looking forward to. And I think that in the Reimagining Congress, we may not be able to implement all the recommendations of the group that have met over the last few months to talk about how we can restructure, or what kind of changes we can make in the World Congress. But we will be making some small changes, and we will appreciate feedback from members and people who attend the Congress on the changes that we are making. Bangkok, of course, Thais are great hosts, and so you can look forward to not just a great scientific program, but having a fun time in Bangkok. And the weather, for those of you who are experiencing winter now, it will be nice to be coming to a warm weather.
Yes.
And and you will be able to be outdoors all the time instead of huddled up in a coat. So I hope that we will get a big crowd in Bangkok. Thanks, Greg, for giving me the opportunity to talk about that.
Of course. And you actually mentioned something, Mary, which jogged something in my brain, because it's a question I receive from members from time to time when we're interacting. And Catherine, as somebody now that's run the gamut, president-elect, president, now immediate past president, a question I often receive that Mary touched on was, how do we come up with Congress locations? I know that there's no hard and fast rule, but can you speak a little bit to that, Catherine? How it is as an organization, we've ultimately decide we're going to wind up here, we're going to wind up over there. Any insight you'd want to provide?
Well, this is something that's changing. I mean, historically, we went North America, Europe, other, which could be, it could be in Southeast Asia, or it could be in, it really hadn't been in Africa, but it, it had been in South America. It's been in Australia, but now I think this is what we're trying to figure out. It's not necessarily the best format, because we do have to be very cost conscious. And so just doing this kind of rotation may not be the best. And that's one of the things we've been discussing in Michele's team, is that we really trying to since cost has become such a big issue for so many people. So it's the cost of travel, going to places that where travel to those places is less expensive, where the venue is reasonable, where hotels are reasonable, where the tax structure is not crazy. So we may change that, but that historically, that's what we've done. We try to move around, obviously, so that everybody gets, the different countries get to host it, which has been very nice for various countries. But I think just having the strict rotation is something that we are looking at not necessarily doing, depending upon to try to make things better if we can.
Thank you, Catherine. And I see that we're starting to get a lot of questions in now, and I'll completely own I opened the Congress conversation, and we can live in this space forever, and we can certainly come back if you've got any questions pertaining to previous Congresses or upcoming Congress. Please feel free to drop them in whichever manner you choose. But I'd like to start running down some of the questions that have come in during our conversation, and I'm going to start with Melina, who asks the panel, what are our evaluation criteria when it comes to grants and fellowships? Now, I understand that our different grants and fellowships, have some guardrails like the collaborative research grants and things like that. But is there somebody, maybe Andrew, did you want to speak to, how we go about deciding on grants and what the criteria are going to be for each? I know we do have, a committee that actually, facilitates all the applications and the evaluation.
Thank you. I think, the first thing to say is that over the last couple of years, we haven't been able to give as many of these as we really would like because of our financial situation. We're looking at new ways of funding many of our grants, and we're optimistic that there'll be an upturn in that. They're sort of a bit of the lowest level they probably will be. It's more a question of the number of grants we give. We have an independent fellowship grants and awards working group. So there's a call for any of the grants we actually have or fellowships. All the applications are appraised by that group, and then they make a recommendation to council. Mary, I think you've been very involved with the developing countries education grants, so maybe you would want to say a couple of things about those. But basically, they're all are appraised all applications are appraised by the working group.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. Just to add to that, as you said, there is a committee and we review all applications. And in fact, even before the application deadline, we do provide assistance to the people who are applying. So I think the office staff is always very active in keeping track of the applications that are coming through. So sometimes when the applications are not complete, we do reach out to the people who are applying to give them any assistance if required. So do apply, and if you have any difficulty, do reach out to the office staff. For the developing countries educational grant, what we started a couple of years ago was a mentorship program to try to, because we realized that a lot of people who were getting the grants were people who had already established themselves or who had some kind of experience with applying for grants, and we were not getting applications from people especially in developing countries. Educational grant is targeted at lower and middle income countries, and we were getting a lot of applications from high middle income countries, but not so much from low middle income and low income countries. This is following the World Bank classification, as some of you may know. So we actually started a mentorship program and asked people who wanted to apply for the grants to reach out to us beforehand, so that one of our committee members or one of our former committee members could help them in the application process. And this has actually been very successful and has resulted in successful applications from those who have been mentored. So I think that we are trying our best to distribute grants as widely as possible, and we have criteria like, if you have received a grant last year, you can't, we won't consider you again for this year. We have all those criteria which are all clearly stated in the application. So unfortunately, the amount of money that we get is limited, that we have to distribute is limited. So we have to be very careful with how we select people. And we also don't give the maximum amount requested to everyone, so that we can distribute the grants over a wider recipient base. I'm also involved with the educational working group and we look at applications for paint schools and paint camps. And we have gone through several meetings to really look at the criteria that we use to assess these grants. As Andrew said, everything is done by a committee, and then we have a meeting after the scores come in. We have a meeting and have a consensus about who to actually finally award the grants to in all cases. But I think that the process that we go through in order to come up with the criteria is actually very rigorous.
Thank you, Mary. And I see Heather Hodge, who's our Director of Education, is chiming up in the chat. Hey, Heather. And she's provided a link as well that should you'll be able to gather more information about the grants and so forth. So thank you, Heather, and thank you, Mary and Andrew. We've got a lot of questions. But Michele, if you want to dive in really quick, and I want to make sure we get through some of these questions, but please.
Chair of the grants and panel for many years until I became SPC chair and I stood down. But just to let everybody know that, what the process was, that the 3 members of the committee independently review the grants, the scores are averaged, they are discussed. If somebody on the panel has themselves or someone from their lab put in an application, they're excluded from the panel for that round. So we do try to keep all the conflicts of interest and so forth very much under control, so that there's, as with any of these things, any perceptions of conflict of interest aren't good. So we take great care with that as well. I just wanted to add those couple of points at the end.
Thank you, Michele. I really appreciate it. I'm going to make sure I've been receiving a bit of guidance that the chat's not completely viewable for everybody. I'm going to correct that in just a moment so that you can see it. And thank you, Renee, for diving in. With that, I'm going to go to the first question in our Q&A here. And Steve, maybe you want to dive in on this. And Khalid states and then asks, there are about 10 centers in Pakistan where pain management is being practiced. How can they go about collaborating with IASP and promoting education and training? So again, I think this speaks to our current global year and things of that nature. Steve, did you want to maybe talk a little bit about it from an administrative standpoint? And then, anybody else that wants to jump in, perhaps Andrew?
Sure. Just very quickly, we would love to promote anything that our members have that are in this educational space. So if we get information into our marketing team, we can definitely look at how we can promote that either through the website or through our social media channels. We definitely want to be promoting what the chapters and federations are doing out there 100%. So you can reach out to me, you can reach out to Angelo Bushnell or his team. You can also use the regular mailboxes that are linked to on the website, but you certainly can email me and I'll get you in touch with the right staff person. And we would love to help promote those kinds of things. Absolutely.
Steve, if anybody else would like to dive in, by all means, Andrew, I see you.
Yeah, thank you. I'm also, one of my other hats is to be liaison to the South Asia community. So there's a lot of ways. First of all, as you said, the global year is a really important opportunity. There will be a lot of publications and activities coming out of the global year that will be relevant to our colleagues in Pakistan. Of course, the best way to collaborate with IASP is to join IASP. So if you can encourage as many of your colleagues to do so, and they'll get the benefits. And our South Asian chapters are one of the ones that are clubbed together, like the Southeast Asian and the European and the Latin American ones, into a federation. And your federation, SARPS, is increasingly active. We know that this year is going to be announced later. They will have both a congress and a pain camp that IASP are funding. So there are a lot of opportunities coming that way, but please feel free to reach out to me as South Asia liaison if you have any further questions.
Just to jump in here, hi Khalid, nice to see you here. I think that we also have some collaboration between our Southeast Asian Federation, which is ASEAPS, and SARPS. and we invite each other for our different congresses, and we are always happy to go and support to support education activities in different countries. So in Pakistan, for example, I took part, Michael Nicholas and I took part in virtually in an education activity at Aga Khan University recently, which was organized by our friend, oh gosh,
It'll come
the
back to you,
name.
Mary.
Yeah. So anyway, so we are always happy to do virtual nowadays with the possibility of giving virtual lectures. I think that there's more we can share education that way. And if you have educational activities that you can open up, that these centers are conducting, that can open up to others, we are happy to, you can advertise, and through ASEAPS, we can also help you to advertise to our members. So thanks, Khalid, and nice to see you here.
Thank you, Mary. I'm going to go to another question in the queue here. This one's from Juan Diego. He says, "Hi, thanks for the opportunity to be here today." And he was curious, is there a mechanism or a way of opening membership for all members of a regional association? The example he uses here is the ACED, which is the Colombian Association for the Study of Pain. I think this, again, is speaking towards, you can be a member of a chapter, but not necessarily a member of IASP, and vice versa. Is there a way at the moment that we know of to facilitate a membership like that? I would think, Steve, perhaps Angela Baselli, who's our director of membership and marketing, might be a place to go for that. Anything you'd want to add to that question, Steve?
So, we're looking hard at the membership model for IASP. Right now, you join the chapter and IASP separately, even though it's a chapter of IASP. We're looking at membership models that might change that. So but we're very much in the exploratory phase. So I don't want to overpromise something, but we are looking at that and whether or not it makes sense to bundle memberships together, and if chapters are willing to do that, of course. But that is something we're looking at, so that you can join all in one place, and we may pilot that with a couple of chapters and see how that works. That's something we're actively considering. And I do think, though, just in general, we have to be willing to think out of the box about different membership models and revisit our membership model from time to time and see if it really does work the way we have it now. I think we're open to lots of different ways to do it. It's always a little bit tricky when you're figuring out your relationships with the chapters, and do chapters want that or do they not want that? And so we have to be sort of careful about how we do that. But we do definitely have to be creative about how we do memberships, and we are considering different membership models that could change how and where you join.
Thank you, Steve. I appreciate it. I want to jump back, not to play topical hopscotch, but we've got a lot of great topics that certainly cover the spectrum here. I want to go back to a question that was pre-submitted from, you'll have to excuse me, I'll try my best, Hein Thua Lin from Myanmar and Burma. Their question that they had pre-submitted was, and perhaps this is a question that'd be equipped for Andrew or Mary as you guys talk strategy for the future. Are there plans for developing pain treatment guidelines for crisis areas? An example provided here would be, places like war zones. I think Dom Aldington's on the call today as well with our pain and trauma SIG, might be a place to collaborate. But any thoughts as to IASP stepping into that space a bit more, or being able to connect folks that need this kinds of information?
We have a very active pain and trauma SIG that's involved in this area. And as you said, Dominic Aldington, who's on the call, is welcome to chip in if he wants. We're not directly developing them ourselves, although we recognize it's a very important subject. But we do make sure we collaborate with the organizations that are doing it at the moment. So currently there's a major revision to the blast injury manual for pediatric pain, both acute and chronic, and we have representation on that. So we're not doing it ourselves, but we do interact with the organizations that are doing it. And if anybody from the SIG wants to raise their hand, they're welcome to join in.
Dom has actually messaged me and said he'd be very happy to be contacted. And Hein Thua, I'd be happy to connect you and Dom after this. That's why we do this. It's great to be able to make connections like this. While we're here, let me pull another question from something that was pre-submitted. And Michael, I think that this one is in your wheelhouse. This comes from John Lozier from the United States. John's, well, appreciate you being here today, John. And the question is, what is the plan for managing commercial sponsorship of exhibits and sessions at ISP congresses and satellite meetings? I know these are conversations we have. Obviously, we always need to be compliant whenever we're working with different factions, those in industry, pharmaceuticals, so on and so forth. Can you speak to that a little bit, Michael? Kind of goes back to our Congress conversation a bit too.
Yeah, I mean, it is certainly an area of active discussion, I think would be the fairest way to describe it. There are proposals in front of council now. I think there will be an active discussion about it when we meet starting, I guess, next week. The council is scheduled to meet. It certainly is an issue of importance and interest to a number of people, and the delicacy is sort of how to thread the needle, if you will, to make sure that everybody's interests, concerns, conflict of interest, the potential impact of pharma on decisions. I'm coming from the U.S. where there clearly was a very clear example of the potential for when the potential impact of industry influence can go sideways and its deleterious consequences. But from an international perspective, it's clearly more complicated than that. So it's going to be, I think, an important discussion, and hopefully by the end of the council meeting, we will resolve at least a clear path forward on that.
No, completely understandable, Michael, and thank you for speaking towards that a little bit. Steve, did you want to dive in on this conversation at all? You think Michael covered it?
Nope, I think Michael covered it just fine.
Perfect. Great. So again, just a reminder for everybody, we've still got plenty of time left. If you've got any questions, feel free to enter them into the Q&A or into the chat. Or as Andrea just mentioned, if you want to raise your hand and speak up, we'd be happy to facilitate that as well. At this point, I'm going to move to a question that I saw back up here in the chat a little bit, if you'll just bear with me. And this comes from a Steve Blake, who writes, as a practitioner and chronic pain educator who's developed methodology that is showing success in helping people, find management for their pain. They were curious as to how they can go about receiving, guidance in disseminating this knowledge to non-scientists, or being able to connect with people with the lived experience of pain to augment and amplify this type of education. Maybe we go to Michele for this. I understand, or Catherine as well. I know that we've also, with this things we've looked at, and we're always trying to include people with the lived experience. Do you want to go, Catherine?
Yeah,
I'm
well,
sorry.
I would probably defer to Steve or somebody in the office about this system that's been set up. We're trying to get people to join it. So it's really a chat. I can't explain it, so maybe you or Steve can explain it exactly, because I don't think we're getting the uptake that we had hoped in terms of people being able to talk to each other. Steve, can you do that?
Sure. So we've created IASP Connect. And on IASP Connect, you can start discussion threads, and you can participate in discussions by topic areas, by SIGs. A number of SIGs are taking advantage of it, but it's really meant to be a gathering place for IASP members to come and talk about whatever it is they want to talk about. And so it's a community gathering spot for people in the pain world. And it has been a little slow to get people engaged in it. I think we rolled it out to SIGs first so that they could kind of play with it, and also we could kind of test the bugs of the system. And it's being rolled out to the full membership I think it has been rolled out to the full membership at this point. But you're right, people have not really kind of jumped on it yet, and we got to figure out some ways to get more people aware of the resource that's there, because networking, talking to each other, it's something we get tons of feedback on that people want, and so we have created this space for that.
Thank you, Steve. And I see Renee, thank you as well. Renee has dropped the URL to head over to ISP Connect as well. I think that's certainly one mechanism. Again, if I may, over at Pain Research Forum, which is going through another evolution, which is always exciting. We're always having conversations with people with lived experience and how they're really becoming integrated across all levels of research. And furthermore, we have Pain Researcher, which again is another open forum that's freely available to everybody, that you can start conversations there as well, and perhaps gather a bit more information in that regard, Stephen. Okay, please, by all means, continue to submit your questions. Next,
Can I
please,
just jump in quickly, Greg, and just say that, there's also the World Congress where you can submit proposals for workshops. If you think that, you want to share your knowledge and expertise, we like to get speakers, workshop proposals from people from different backgrounds and different countries, different regions if possible. But you can always submit a workshop proposal to the coming Bangkok World Congress when the calls for proposals come out.
And Mary, even truthfully, it's pretty competitive, the workshop proposals, but in terms of submitting an abstract, and there's a lot of opportunity to talk about your work with many people. So just submitting a poster abstract, which those are, the very, very large majority of those are accepted, and so it's another way of talking to people about your work.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Catherine, for providing that insight. I'm going to shift gears again. So Bronwyn Freeman pre-submitted a question, and they're very excited to have it answered. So Bronwyn asked, might IASP consider an initiative around knowledge graphs and their potential to advance pain research across basic, translational, and clinical domains? So I've got to be very, very straightforward. That was something I was a little unfamiliar with. So for those that might not be knowledgeable about what knowledge graphs are, a quick definitions are data models that represent real-world entities like people, places, or events as nodes and their relationships and connections. So what comes top of mind for me is KEGG pathways as a molecular scientist, how we connect all these different nodes of proteins that are interacting with one another. So I don't know that this is something that we've explicitly discussed at IASP, but does anybody on the panel want to jump in with their thoughts? Is this a way that, or another lever of information that ISP can utilize to find connections across these spaces? I think this kind of speaks toward what Michele had mentioned, that we've got our clinicians, we've got our basic scientists, and sometimes we're speaking different languages. Is this a mechanism that we could utilize, or are there other ways we're ideating to create these connections across our organization? I don't mean to put you on the spot, Michele, but I'd love to hear if you had any insight.
Sure. I have to admit too that I wasn't familiar with the knowledge graphs, but it certainly sounds like a great idea, and I think it's something that certainly I'll have a look at, and we can have a look at. But I agree, trying to link across the different disciplines and areas is something that, as I said, is challenging, but really important for us to achieve.
And I see that Bronwyn is with us today. So by all means, if you'd like to speak as well. But Michael, your hand is up. Do you want to dive in? Oh, you did the unmute thing.
Yeah, sorry. I mean, I think the idea of knowledge graphs is sort of one of a number of different approaches that are sort of emerging. Ontology would be another important one, having been associated with the organization for many years now, and where there have been multiple attempts at sort of standardizing a taxonomy to talk about, or with pain terms, and to talk about pain. I think it's a critical issue particularly with an organization like ours that span the basic to clinical research, to make sure that we're all using the same terms. Ontology would certainly help. Common data elements would help to ensure that we're talking about the same thing. And then as long as we've got the proper terms, then these sort of knowledge graphs and other sorts of data mining strategies can really be brought to bear. But I would argue that we're still at a point where we're often using the same term to refer to very different things at the moment. It'd be nice to resolve that one first.
No, most definitely. And Bronwyn, I see you've got your hand up. Did you want to add to the conversation a little bit? I'm going to go ahead and unmute you right now if you'd like to add to the conversation.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you just fine.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much. And Michael, to your point about the ontologies, I'm so happy you mentioned it, because I think that's the foundation for knowledge graphs. And I don't have a strong technical background. I've really just been introduced to it myself in the last 6 months. But if it's something that there's some interest in, I'd love to discuss it further. And if I know that there would be some interest to just look at it and explore, I would really like to. And if Michele and Michael and Greg, if you guys are the right people to have a conversation about this with, then that will be great.
Yeah, absolutely, Bronwyn. You know, there obviously, if you head to our website, you always feel free to email myself or anybody on staff. And I shouldn't put words in the panel's mouth, but I'd have to go ahead and imagine that they'd be very, very affable to receiving a message from you as well. So please don't hesitate to reach out. This is exactly the kind of conversation we want to have at these town halls. So thank you, Bronwyn. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, I'm going to shift gears a little bit to somebody that's been very patient, the editor-in-chief of our journal, Payne, Karen Davis. It's good to see you this evening. And Karen asked a question about 30 minutes ago. So again, thank you for your patience. And I think we'll start with Andrew and then make our way over to Michael, who might want to weigh in as well. And that's now that we've closed our physical office, which used to be in Washington, D.C. in the United States, can you comment on any plans or aspirations for the future in terms of reestablishing a physical office, you know, which doesn't necessarily need to be located within the United States, versus remaining in our current model of being a virtual office? Andrew, you got any thoughts there? And Michael and Steve, I'm sure there's going to be good traction around this.
Only very brief, because this is really Steve's domain. We sold the office last year at a reasonable price. And because of the COVID pandemic, many of the staff were operating virtually anyway. And what we've done is council decided to have a 1-year experiment to see if it works. We're about halfway through that experiment now. And at the end of that, we'll determine what our structure is. But the virtual office is looking pretty efficient and working pretty well at this stage. But this is one for Steve, really.
Steve, do you want to dive in? And again, after Steve, if anybody else wants to add their thoughts, by all means.
So we're working through it. Staff, as Andrew said, was largely remote when I joined the organization. And staff has been, everybody on the team has been really appreciative of that. It's allowed us to go out and hire people all over the US, at least at first. Although I think as we have openings in the future, we will expand our search to other parts of the world. Now that we're not tied to an office, and work cultures have really changed as much as they have, we don't need to have an entirely US-based team anymore. We can hire future hires in other parts of the world. And actually, I would be excited to have employees in other parts of the world, because I think representation in Southeast Asia, in South America, and other places would be really good for the organization in terms of cultural perspective, but also local resources for people to be able to tap into. So, you know, I think it's been only a positive for us so far. Our team morale seems pretty good around it. We do, you know, do things like have an online coffee gathering each week so we can chit chat about things and get some of the experience you would have in an office. We're doing a retreat in a few months so that we can all gather together. And we were all together as a team in Amsterdam for Congress, but we had to work. Obviously, that's a big amount of work for us. But, you know, we also had time to, you know, have dinner together and enjoy some lighter moments to get to team building and cohesion with your team, with your staff. So, you know, and so far it's only been positive, and we will evaluate it. But I do think not having an office opens us up to a lot of cool aspects, including a more international team over time.
As somebody working virtually, I gotta say I do appreciate it on days like this in the Northeast when there's snow and ice all over the place. But yes, a continually evolving situation. It's been a fun experience, and we got a great team right now. Is anybody else on the panel wants to weigh in on this capacity at all? Otherwise, we've certainly got a fair share of questions to run into next. So by all means, speak up if you'd like. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go with a question that came from one of our members in Armenia. I will try my best, and I'm going to go first name, Magravan. Thank you so much. I do try. Essentially, what they've asked was, how does ISP feel about using preparations made from natural or raw materials as medicine for pain management? So effectively talking towards, you know, more natural remedies, things like that. I know that we don't necessarily have a special interest group directly attributed to this kind of research, but any insight as to, you know, where we kind of fall on this spectrum? Or Catherine, I see your hand is up.
Okay, well, since my area has always been non-pharmacological treatments, and we had our global year 2 years ago on integrative pain care with a large emphasis. And for people who haven't seen it, we have a fact sheets on a number of non-drug pain treatments and the data, you know, and about the efficacies, the best that we know. So this is something that obviously we don't conduct research, but it's something that is part of the research that's presented at our meetings. It's something that we care about. And so if anybody wants to, you know, even there is, as far as I know, there is no SIG right now that really is dealing with natural remedies. Although if somebody's interested in forming a SIG, I think Renee could probably put something in the chat about how to form a SIG. But it is obviously many of us in ISP are very keen to explore more about all different remedies that are beyond the normal pharmaceutical remedies.
Thank you, Catherine. Anybody else want to dive in on this question? We've certainly got a lot more to get to. Okay, thank you, Catherine. I appreciate it. We have another question in the Q&A from Heinthua again. And essentially, I wanted to throw this out. And Michele, I think this will fall into your wheelhouse as we come back to Congress a little bit. Essentially, what Heinthua is asking is, if you recall in Toronto, you know, as a response to the ongoing pandemic, we had a hybrid Congress where there was virtual components and our in-person. And in Amsterdam, that is not something that we pursued, you know, having a simultaneous hybrid model. Although you can go to our Pain Education Resource Center and find a plethora of Congress recordings that are freely available to all our members. Essentially, Michele, in discussions with the Reimagining Congress Committee, is this something that was discussed, maybe going back to a hybrid model, or have we moved past it now that, you know, some of the effects of the pandemic have started to dissipate?
Yes, so certainly we did discuss it. And it was part of the survey that went out, and overwhelmingly people were not in favour of a hybrid conference. They like the in-person meeting. The other thing, and with the hybrid format, it is really expensive to get it to work properly. And if it doesn't work properly, then it's quite upsetting for the people trying to watch it at the other end. So for the moment, where the group, the Reimagining Congress group, its recommendation is to return to in-person Congress. So yes, that's the situation at the moment, which I think most international conferences are returning to. So yes, as Greg said, all the presentations from the Congress in Amsterdam are up on the education resource site, and they were up there within a couple of weeks of the Congress finishing. So, you know, dive in there and hopefully everything that you could wish. And we'll be doing that again. That was, I think, really well received, and we'll be doing that again at future conferences.
Absolutely. It's good to have those videos in perpetuity as well, Michele, because it'll be a riot to look back 25 years from now. I don't have any hair, but I'm probably going to have a lot less in the future. Andrew, I did see your hand. Please, by all means, dive in if you'd like to share some thoughts.
Just to add to that, to emphasize again that all the recordings go up, so there are virtual elements to it. There are a lot of other virtual opportunities, webinars. Penn Research Forum is redesigning its platform at the moment, and the Global Year. But I've been asked in the chat to point out one other thing about congresses, and that's we've discussed the cost of registration, but we haven't discussed the environmental cost of, and we've instituted a task force now that are looking very closely at different aspects of environmental sustainability, both in terms of clinical practice, analgesic pollution, laboratory practice, and we'll be producing recommendations and guidelines. But another part of that is to look at ISP as an organization, to determine what our carbon footprint is, and to see ways in which we can reduce it. Undoubtedly, being careful about where we site our congresses will be an important part of that, both the travel to it and the green credentials of the conference center. So, for example, in Bangkok, we know that the conference center we selected uses a lot of solar power. So we are looking at the other costs of having a conference. Travel, of course, is always going to be a major one of those, and the possibility for some people to travel by rail is always an important option. So we're looking at the environmental costs of congresses as well. And you'll be hearing a lot more about that task force over the next 2 years.
Thank you, Andrew. If anybody has any other thoughts they'd like to share, by all means. Otherwise, we've still got some pre-submitted questions I haven't had an opportunity to get to yet. Michael, I'm going to put you on the spot because we were chatting about it right before we dove in. This is science. We are a scientific society. Is there any interest on the IASP side for, exploring new concepts in neural transmission? Kind of this idea of the synapse being a transistor. I know that you mentioned you read a little bit. Please, let's hear it.
Hey, you're a funny guy, Greg. You are definitely putting me on the spot. Yeah,
I love it.
It's an interesting question. I don't think, the closest we could come would be, I'm trying to think of whether there's a SIG that would really be an appropriate forum to grapple with this kind of thing. Mm-hmm. I've got a number of projects now that are involving modeling. I think the representation of modelers in the organization is low, and it certainly is an area for growth, given the development of a whole variety of sort of new research techniques. The earlier question about knowledge graphs, and certainly AI being one of them. But as there's discussions about alternatives, it's always been true about basic research, whether there are alternatives to preclinical models. These sorts of sort of in vitro, in silico types of strategies can really complement approaches. But I would argue that sort of the SIG format is really one of the best ways of really exploiting this. And again, it's an advantage of the ISP that we have SIGs, but hopefully you can through the SIG, identify folks to help develop something like this. Might be a great proposal for 2026.
Yeah, and Michael, thank you for being a sport. I know I'm beating up on you a little bit. Something that also came top of mind, and hopefully Renee, I know we're making Renee work really hard today, would also be able to drop something into the chat. And I'll get right to you, Steve. We just recently created a new submission portal over at our journal Pain. Our perspectives and commentaries have traditionally been invited, or rather I should say perspectives articles and editorials. And this sounds like a topic that might be of interest if you wanted to submit a proposal to write that. Steve, I want to get back over to you. I saw your hand up. I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Greg. I just wanted to jump in on obviously I'm not jumping in on the science that Michael addressed.
By all means.
But I wanted to address the question that was answered in the Q&A and then dismissed. So the question was from Karen Davis, and it was essentially about DEI. In the United States, DEI is diversity, equity, inclusion. People also sometimes use accessibility with that acronym, and in other countries and cultures, it's described different ways. But Michael answered about, we have responded in a letter saying we want to keep the US and WHO and so on. As a US based, even though we're a global organization, we are based in the US, and people have seen a lot of news about all of the executive actions being taken against diversity, equity, and inclusion. I just want to say that we're not backing off of that position at all. That we're still very committed to diversity here at IASP, and we're not climbing down off of that position. That's not necessarily the question that was asked, but for anybody who may have been wondering, we are very committed to that.
Thank you, Steve. I appreciate you bringing that back into the conversation, which is also another reminder. We do have a little bit of time left. I want to give everybody on our panel an opportunity to share a few last words, but I've got 2 questions in front of me that I'd also like to get through. But again, that doesn't necessitate that you don't have the opportunity to continue asking questions. In the event that we run short on time, we can certainly address them offline by email or connect via virtually, be it through Zoom or any other mechanism. So I'm going to go back to another question from Steve Blake, who also asked a question live today, and this was something pre-submitted. And Steve writes, given IASP's commitment to exploring non-pharmacological pain interventions, what pathways exist or can be created by the organization to promote collaboration for further innovation? Catherine, I think this kind of falls back under your purview, when we talk about non-pharmacological treatments. Anything you want to...
Well, I mean, it kind of comes back to the other question that
Yep.
This is what we have SIGs for. And I think that if anybody's interested in forming a SIG about non-pharmacological pain management, it would be a great thing to have. And then that it gives an opportunity for the people that are interested in that to be talking to each other, working together, having SIG symposia, and through our online Connect system to be able to talk to each other. So yeah, I would just encourage it from anybody who's interested.
Thank you, Catherine. Mary, I saw that you had your hand up and it went down. Did you want to add?
Yeah, I wanted to say that we also, we have developed the multidisciplinary pain clinic, pain center toolkit, and as part of that initiative, we have been conducting training on interdisciplinary pain management approaches, which includes non-pharmacological approaches. And we are trying to, we trying to promote this in all pain management settings, clinical settings. And we have a training program that we can run. We haven't come up with something that can be used by everybody yet, but we do have some experience running these trainings virtually for clinicians working in pain management settings, especially in low resource settings.
Can I elaborate on this? Mary's, the toolkit that's been developed is amazing. And maybe this is something, again, for Renee, I keep bugging you, but that you could put this, a link to that, because I think that this is something that can be used. I mean, Mary and others have organized training sessions, but people can organize their own training session, and people who have attended the various training sessions have gone back to their own institutions and organized their own training sessions. So this is something that can really grow and can be used worldwide. So I guess, Mary, would you, who should they contact? I mean, we put this in the link to it, but should they contact you, or if they're interested in
Can I make a suggestion there, Catherine? It's going to be, of course, I'm sure, I want to add your words that it's an absolutely fantastic resource and has led to change very quickly in some countries, Vietnam, most notably, and Myanmar and Indonesia, where we piloted it. It's going to be a major aspect of the global year.
Great.
So in addition to Mary and the staff, you can also contact the global year leads if you wish, but it will be something we'll be pushing out quite a lot in this global year.
Yeah, and the point of contact would be our education department, which would be Heather Hodge, whose email has also been written in the chat. And yeah, I'm happy to be contacted about it as well, especially if you are in my region of the world, Southeast Asia, Asia Pacific.
And I'll also mention that I'm sure it's not lost on everybody in attendance that it makes it easier for us on staff if you're directing questions to the appropriate inboxes, like members at IASP/power-pain.org if you have a membership related question, things like that. I only bring this up because in the event you find yourself confused, you're not know where to go, email somebody on staff. We work intimately. We'll be able to get your question routed appropriately. So don't ever hesitate to reach out, even if you're confused if this is the appropriate means. Okay, we're starting to come towards the end here. So what I'd like to do is send out one last call. If you've got any questions, you know the mechanisms to ask them. And we'll always keep these conversations going. But I want to look forward a little bit. And I'd love for everybody on the panel to weigh in here. And maybe we'll do this in reverse order from how we've done our introductions. But it's simply, what are some future initiatives you'd like to see the organization pursue in the short term or long term, or things to think about, as we move forward, especially as we get into, 2025 and in Bangkok next year, where are we going as an organization? And Steve, maybe we can start with you and we'll run it back from there.
So this is primarily about future activities and
You'd like to speak on, Steve, be it future activities or things that we're exploring that maybe we'd like to dive into in the future. Certainly not making any promises, but some of the conversations we've been having amongst our leadership and our staff.
So I think the thing I would like to leave people with is that I've been here 13 months, and the folks on the panel here and other members of council have been I'm really open to what kinds of things can we do to improve, change, advance IASP so that we are meeting our members' needs more fully, and how can we be innovative about implementing new programs and new strategies. So I feel like we're in a phase where we are going to try some new things. We are going to look at new membership models. We are going to look at different ways to deliver education. We're going to try to figure out how to be more innovative in Congress and so on. So, I think it's all of these things have to be thought through carefully, and we have to sort of, progress in a way that we don't disrupt the things that people enjoy about IASP and why they value their memberships. But I think, we're going to be very open to trying new things and trying to really change the level of engagement, and things like this, doing the town hall and demonstrating more transparency, more feedback from our membership about what they need and want, more opportunities for people to engage as a volunteer, more opportunities for online community. We want to be more integral to your experience as a professional in the pain field, and we want to be more relevant in that space. And so we're going to be willing to try a lot of new things and be set kind of a different tone in the future. So, I'm excited for that. I'm excited about the willingness from the leadership to head in that direction. And so from that perspective, it's a very exciting place for me to be, and I hope it's true for the rest of the team. But it's exciting for me to be part of that kind of atmosphere.
Thank you, Steve. I'm thrilled to be a part of it myself. Michael, do you have some thoughts?
I don't know how I could follow anything that's he just said it all. His phrasing of how the ISP can be integral to your professional career, I think, in my mind, really hit it on the head. People shouldn't be asking themselves, why should I renew my membership? It should be clear why they're renewing their membership, what they're getting out of it, what ISP does for them, not to them. The fact that we were willing and did take a stand on the U.S. government's decision about the World Health Organization. This is something that has worldwide implications. We are an international organization. there should be no hesitancy in making it clear where we stand on that sort of an issue. You know, reinvigorating our grants programs to facilitate interaction, developing countries, collaborative grants, you know, I think is integral. Thinking about creatively what we do in the off year. You know, that right now we are running 2 SIG meetings, the IAS, you know, the pediatric pain SIG and the NOOP SIG. Can we better meet the needs of those 2 SIGs as well as the rest of the SIGs in these off years? Keep it, you know, a focused and specialized meeting. But it really comes back to what Steve articulated, which is, you know, how can we, as we're looking for the next 50 years of this organization, really make it an integral part of the members' professional careers.
Thank you, Michael. Very well put. Very well put. Michele, I know what you and I are going to be doing in the short-term future, celebrating the 50th anniversary of our flagship journal, Pain. But it doesn't necessarily need to be through the lens of publications, Michele. I'd love to hear what you hope to see in the future here as we move along.
I think Steve and Michael have covered it well. I think I'm really encouraged by the improved communication between IASP, the office, you know, council, executive, and the members. So we'd urge members to get in contact with us. We really are trying to progress the organisation, to improve the things we do. I mean, I'm passionate about the multidisciplinary nature of the organisation. That's why I get so involved, that I find it just refreshing to look at the problem of pain from various perspectives rather than a unidimensional one, and why I've remained a member of IASP for a long time now, and I really value that. So I think we'd love to hear from you all. We'd love to have people engaged and reach out to us and really move forward with a great and vibrant organisation that, as Michael says, people, you know, can't live without. They have to join, and to look at it that way, I think.
Thank you, Michele. I appreciate it. Catherine, you were at the helm during a very transformative period, most of which was completely outside of your control, you know, as we were navigating the pandemic. But, you know, we've seen so much change, you know, for the better. You know, the changes always, you know, brings, you know, different capacities to the work that we do. But again, you know, Catherine, you know, where we were, where we are now, where we're going in the future, you know, what are you thinking about the organization as we move forward?
Well, first of all, I want to shout out to Steve and all of you. We were in a lot of turmoil. Staff turnover was just like almost daily. Now we haven't had staff turnovers. I mean, everybody seems happy. And I love the fact that, Steve, as we expand and staff changes, we're going to be more international now, and we don't have to have everybody that's, you know, that's based in the United States. And and the diversity in the staff is wonderful to see. But one of the issues that we have is that it's that we have to have an expanded income model. And you all, or Steve and the whole, you know, all of us, we're working together on this. Will be a donor campaign, and you know, those of us who can, I will reach out, help when you can, reach out to your friends. We'll be looking for both individual and corporate donors. So anybody who has interesting ideas along those lines, or have friends and family who want to help, we can't sustain, you know, everything has been changing. We no longer have the corporate support, or necessarily want the corporate support we've had in the past. Meetings are becoming more expensive. We have so many things we like doing, so that this is a whole nother area that will be developed. And you know, anybody who can and is willing to help out, I just beg you to do so. But I'm just seeing that there's, with the leadership we have now, you know, I think we're really on a great path, and it makes me very excited.
Thanks, Catherine. Mary, we're coming over your side of the world next year. What are you thinking as we move into Bangkok in 2026, and what it'll be like when Andrew passes the gavel to you at the conclusion of next year? What are you thinking about for the future?
It'll be frightening. Yeah, thanks, Greg. I want to echo what has been said by everyone, and I think that we really do need. We want to expand our membership. I'm hoping that both in terms of numbers of individual IASP members as well as chapters. Andrew and I are racing to see who will be president when we get the 100th chapter approved by IASP. We have 90, how many? 97 or 98 at the moment. Yeah. Yeah, so we are we are trying to expand our reach to different parts of the world, and we hope that, as Michael said, you will see the need and the value of joining IASP, and within. I hope that all of you who are here today, you are IASP members, obviously, because you wouldn't be here otherwise. But I hope you are also members of your own local chapter. So, we have this different membership. You have to join both separately. And it has its pros and cons, this kind of membership model. But I hope that you are all also members of your own chapter. And if you're not, please look up what your chapter is and go and join them. And having a lot of activities in the pain field, whether it is basic science or clinical, in your own area, and organizing it. I think that's important, and getting other people excited as well about joining IASP. We are happy to help in any way that we can. So as everybody has said, please feel free to reach out to us. And if we don't respond, please understand that we may be getting many emails, and don't be afraid to resend your email and say, hey, you haven't responded to me yet. So I hope to hear more from members, and I hope that we can develop our membership also in areas of the world, parts of the world where we are not so active at the moment. So thanks, Greg, and thanks everybody for being here today and spending your time with us.
Appreciate you, Mary. Andrew, it's still your gavel. You got a while still. And it's been really exciting, since you came on as our new president following the Amsterdam meeting. And we've got a great global year that was just launched, a lot of things in the works. Andrew, how you feeling about, the next couple of years and into the future for the organization, and maybe some things you'd like to pursue or things to explore as we move forward here?
So thank you, Greg. I'm going to just echo what the others have said, and I'm really thrilled that so many members have turned up to our town hall. We're 50 years young, and 50 years is a great opportunity to take a really deep dive into what we do, where we're going. So next week, or in 10 days or so, we're having our annual council meeting, and at least 2 days of that will be spent having a really deep dive into IASP's strategy and what our future direction is going to be, and setting us up for the next 50 years. And some of that, like the Reimagining Congress Task Force, have already made their reports to us. So look out for a lot of positive changes. At the moment, I'm particularly thrilled about our current global year. We will have our first ever pain camp. Pain camps are one of our best educational models, our pain camps and schools in Africa, led by Helen Kikuyu and Romy Parker. We've also got the two presidential task forces that are looking into areas that are exciting. So the environmental task force has all sorts of interesting ideas, particularly analgesic pollution of water systems is quite a topical area that we were largely unaware about. And we'll be relaunching our new laboratory animal guidelines, probably in about 18 months or so. Those haven't been updated for 40 years, but are one of the most highly cited aspects of pain. So a time of positive change and innovation. Keep your ideas coming, keep feeding in. And as Mary said, if we don't respond to the first email, which I hope we do, send another. Please keep your suggestions and ideas coming, because our ears are open. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Andrew. And We have an expression in the States, and I know it's said elsewhere, speak now or forever hold your peace, if anybody had some last words, but we're going to throw that out the window because this conversation is not ending. We have plans to hold, many town halls in the future. And, as Steve has spoken toward, and Mary and Andrew and others on the panel, this recommitment to effective and timely communication. So please don't ever hesitate to reach out to us as an organization, and we'll do everything we can to help facilitate any requests for information or anything else that you need as a member. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and close this down and give everybody a few minutes back. We've come to the conclusion of our IASP Town Hall meeting. I want to thank once again Andrew, Mary, Catherine, Michelle, Michael, and Steve for being here today, as well as everybody in attendance. It's been a great conversation. I'd also be remiss if I didn't take a moment to thank Renee Chassie. Renee, doing a lot of work in the chat, as well as Angelo Pacelli, who was really instrumental in helping to coordinate today's event. As I just mentioned, we plan to hold a lot more town halls in the future as an organization, and we'll be sure to pass along that information when it becomes available. Wherever you are in the world, if you're just starting out, have a great day. If you're shutting down, have a great night, and we'll chat with you soon. Thanks so much, and take care.